All right, guys, thank you so much for coming back. I know people are still out at lunch, but this is just sort of an added bonus of what we're doing. And plus, he doesn't want to miss the Jake Paul fight this afternoon. So we're making sure that Joe gets some time to present and see the fight at the same time. Yeah? Okay, all right. So Joe Cline is an outstanding individual who produces a lot of podcasts, for Arkansas. But before that, did a lot of other things I'll let him talk about. If you guys, just as a reminder, if you missed anything from this presentation or you want to go back over any of the information, you will get links to the video of this presentation so you can watch that over and over. I'm sure Joe won't mind if you reach out to him as well, and he'll tell you all about how to follow him past this point. So, Joe, go ahead and take it away.
Thank you, guys. I'm super excited to be here because I am a tech YouTuber and I don't have any friends who like to talk tech with me at all, ever. So this is a treat for me. We go on date nights with my wife and I'm like, oh, this new camera came out. And she's like, whatever, I thought we were talking about my feelings. So, I'm excited today to talk about this. Okay, so I'm Joe. I am from Brinkley, Arkansas. I recently moved to Texas during COVID, so not too recent. And in Texas, I started a couple podcasts there, and that's where I got into podcasting. Before that, wasn't interested in podcasting at all. And honestly, the only reason I became interested in podcasting is because YouTube decided in 2020 to dump a lot of money into podcasting that year. They had made a public statement announcement that, hey, we're investing in podcasting. We're putting a lot of money to here. So that meant as a creator on YouTube, or if you did podcast on Spotify or somewhere else, that only meant more money in our pockets. So that's what made me transition over to podcasting. I pitched this idea to some friends that I had who were much, much bigger creators than I was. And they were like, yeah, let's do it. So fast forward all the way till today, that podcast was very, very successful. In fact, one of the people who was on the podcast actually just got signed to Nickelodeon. It was a children's podcast, so it was for like 8-year-olds all the way up to 18-year-olds. So now anywhere I go around the world, I have little kids about this high running up to me in airports. Hey, Joe, and hugging me, nice to meet you, and I have to explain to their parent, hey, I'm not a stranger to them, but I am a stranger, so make sure you keep your kid close to you. Okay, so we're going to be talking about gear, and I just want to get started with this. So this session will focus on the how-to of podcasting, covering everything from different microphone setups to video podcasting and the gear you'll need, whether you're starting with a beginner setup or looking to go pro. You'll learn all the essentials to get podcasting off the ground and running smoothly. So what is podcasting technically? Technically, like T-E-C-H, like tech, technically. So podcast technically is audio, right? Like if we're talking technically, it is simply audio. And I want everybody to really understand that I know that to be true, excluding all this fancy gear that I have up here, because a lot of times we can get lost in the weeds with, oh, how do the visuals look? What's the outreach going to look like? What about the thumbnail, the title, the SEO? But when it comes to podcasting, really all you need to have is a good story that you're conveying to your audience or a good message, and you need to have good audio. So it all starts with the audio. So that being said, who has a phone? If you have a phone, can you please hold it up? Hold up your phone. Okay, so if you have a phone, guess what? You can start a podcast. That's all you need nowadays. Thank you guys for letting me speak. That's all you need to know. I'm joking. So phones, starting with the iPhone, we're going to go into microphones first. Phones are so good, especially if you have an iPhone. Like the new software, the new features that they have available, I'll talk about them here in a second, are so good for content creators. If you have an Android, I'm sorry, get away from the green bubbles and go blue, and you'll get all the features I'm about to talk about. So first, let's talk about doing audio with podcasting. So you guys are probably familiar with the Voice app on your iPhone. So the Voice app is, it comes when you download the application. When you get the phone brand new, it comes on there. And this app has been updated with some really good podcasting features. So this is where we're starting with podcasting gear at $0. So if you have $0, here's how I would recommend that you start your podcast. Make sure your phone's updated to the newest update, and you go on a voice app. What this voice app on your iPhone, again, this is completely free, already built in. It will record your audio. It will give you different ways that you would like to treat your audio. So if you want to remove background noise, if you want to make one voice a little bit louder, you can do all of that completely for free right within the voice app. Now, the other thing that is really, really cool, and I'll talk a little bit about why this is really, really cool very briefly, because this doesn't have a lot to do with gear, is that this app will also, in live time, in real time, it will transcribe your audio. So as soon as you get done with your podcast, you have text within the voice app that automatically transcribed your podcast for you. Now, this is super helpful because you can use something that I created on ChatGPT, and it's called the AI Podcast Creator. And basically what this does is if you take that text, create it, again, straight from your iPhone for free, and you paste it within ChatGPT, within this AI bot that I made, it will come up with a summary for you. It will cut out 10 different social media reels for you that it suggests. It would also give you relevant tags for outreach for your podcast. And then it will also give you thumbnail suggestions. I don't know if you've seen it on YouTube or on, like if you go to my podcast, Arkansas Minds on Instagram, you'll see I typically have the guest. They're right here. There's like a blank background behind them, and then it has a quote, an interesting quote to get you to go say, hey, I need to listen to that podcast. It'll give you 20 different options of those quotes, and it does it like that instantly. So that's one way that I would recommend that you start with $0, right? And that's all with your iPhone. Okay, let's say you go through Christmas, and I know we're all older, so we don't get gifts anymore, but maybe your significant other is like, hey, I want to invest in your podcast for you. What do they invest in? So if you're going to be starting with your iPhone, one thing that I would suggest jumping up to is these guys right here. These are called the Rode Wireless Go. And these are incredible microphones. I will say I recommend that you do get the ones that have recording built in. So there are the Rode Wireless Go's. Then there are the Rode Wireless Go 2. You want to get the 2s. And if I were you, I would buy them used. I didn't mean for that to rhyme, but it did. So there we go. So you want to buy these because they'll record internally. However, if you are loving the first step that I recommended within your iPhone, these microphones can connect directly to your iPhone. So whenever you're getting ready for podcasting, right, you take one device, you can either just like clip it on your shirt, and then clip the other one on your guest shirt, and you're ready for podcasting. Now, for me, a lot of the podcasts that I do are for professionals, like career professionals or nonprofits, and they also include video. So we need each podcast to look professional. So imagine like a billionaire CEO having this clip to him for a podcast. It doesn't look very professional, right? So one way that I get around that is this right here. This little thing right here costs about what you're looking at costs about $15 on Amazon. So what this allows you to do is take this microphone, and you can stick the microphone in here, and now you have like almost like a podcasting microphone that you can sit on a table right in front of your guest. You can have another one in front of you, and now you're ready to go. Again, this is like, if you want a link, just come ask me after. I'll be happy to send you my affiliate links because I'm a tech YouTuber, remember? I have 2 kids at home I have to feed, so ask me for the links, please. I'm joking. Okay, so next we have, if you want to step up, let's say, okay, look, I get it. That's not me. I have a little bit of money. Let's say you have like $500. You're balling, right? So here's an option for you. This is called the Zoom F3. And there are different versions. There are cheaper versions. I recommend that you get the cheaper versions, not specifically this one, because I bought this one well before COVID, so it's overpriced, and they have cheaper versions now. So this one costs $300, but they have better ones specifically for podcasting now. They're only like $120, and you can record 4 microphones instead of 2. But the idea behind these are that they record something called 32-bit float, which I'm sorry, it's super technical. You guys probably have no idea what I mean, but you can imagine this. So if you're in front of a microphone and you're recording your podcast, what happens if you get super duper loud and you start yelling, right? It's gonna spike. It's gonna not sound good. Or what happens if you have that guest? Typically for me, it's like someone who's like just very, very quiet, and they either don't get their microphone close enough, or they're just very, very soft-spoken like this the whole time. Well, what 32-bit float does is allow you to adjust the volume completely without any loss. So you're never gonna get too loud, you're never gonna get too quiet to a certain extent without it messing up. So you have that flexibility here. I will say, if you're podcasting and your guest or you are this far away from the microphone, please stop the podcast and tell them to bring it closer, because it's just gonna make a better listening experience for everybody. You can't really clean up, someone being this far away, but if they're talking low, you can definitely clean it up with something like this. So now, if you buy a recording device like this, then you're gonna be upgrading to these lovely devices. You actually have real microphones. So the first step up is something called a pod mic. This is like, at least in my circle, like content creators all over use these mics because they're relatively cheap for microphones. I realize to some people it may not be cheap, but when you're talking about this gear, it can get expensive. So this microphone retails like $90, and you can plug it into any one of these recording devices and get really good podcast audio. You can even buy like adapters and cables and things to plug this directly into your phone if you still want to use your phone for a recorder. And this is called the pod mic. Now, if you're someone who's doing your podcasting with remote guests, which I know is pretty big nowadays, remote podcasting, I recommend that you use Riverside. And when you use Riverside, you can select different microphones that you have attached to your computer. Or if you're using a Mac, then you can actually use your iPhone as your camera within Riverside. So if you're gonna do that, then you want the Pod Mic USB. You can plug this microphone directly into your computer, and it will pop up, like let's say if you wanted to go on Facebook or Instagram or, like I said, Riverside or even Zoom, this microphone will plug directly into your phone, into a computer, and it'll be recognized as a device that you can select. No software needed. So this is the one, I like this one a lot because of the versatility. However, when you do go from the Pod Mic to the Pod Mic USB, you're gonna add an additional $100, so it's like $200. So I don't have a lot of those just because, again, they're a little bit more expensive. Now, this is like what I call the GOAT microphone. You see these on all the big podcasts for the most part. There's another one like the Rode NTG, but this is called the SM7B microphone. And like if you've watched Joe Rogan, if you've watched, I don't know who else, but everyone uses this type of microphone. These are kind of expensive, like $400 microphones. So I try to keep it nice and protected. But this is what you'd be looking at if you're trying to start a big podcast. And the reason why microphones get more expensive is because of how they sound. Now, you can notice with this microphone, it sounds pretty good. And actually, if you're listening to me now thinking about how I sound, you're like, oh yeah, it probably does sound pretty good. Well, actually, this same exact microphone that I have in my hand has the same exact insides that this microphone has, but it's geared for podcasting. So these are basically the same microphones, but because this is for podcasters, they're charging you more. So it's the same exact thing. It's a Shure SM7B. Okay, now, two things we'll go through because I don't want to take up too much time. When it comes to stands, and then we'll do video. So you have your stands, right, that you can use with your microphone. I love these because they're nice and low for my guests, and they can adjust them. Again, these are what you see like on a lot of podcasts nowadays where they're sitting down at a table, and this is video podcasts, obviously, where they're sitting down at a table. You will see these. These stands are only like $70 on Amazon, or you can do like Amazon Renewed, and I think you can get them for like $30 used. So I really, really like these stands. You can route your cables through here. Now you can go over to this one, which costs like $5. Super duper affordable for this one. And then we have this one again, maybe like $10 for this one. And then if you're in an environment, I keep a lot of these. These are just regular, similar to what you see standing over here stands. So I've done a lot of podcasting literally out in the wild. So I don't know if I'm going to have a table. All of these only work for a table. A good example, there was a missionary who came down from Zambia, South Africa, a couple months ago, and we did a men's trip to Devil's Den. So we are out in Devil's Den. No service, no plugins, nothing. So he tells us these stories about these crazy stories he's had in Zambia with these people who have never seen another person who's not from their tribe before. So I'm like, man, I want to capture this story in podcasts. Like, I would love for you to come on my podcast and talk about it. He's like, I'll fly back to Zambia tomorrow. Luckily, I had my podcasting gear in my in my car, so we were able to pop these up in the middle of Devil's Den, sit on some logs with this stand and podcast. That really wouldn't have been possible with any of these type of microphones because they would have been holding them. You would have get the noise from them holding them, that type of thing. So just keeping a couple of different options if you're going to really, really get into podcasting is a good idea. Okay, now video, which is the last thing that we'll talk about. If you're going to be doing video, there are a couple different things that I would say before you do that. One, have you locked in your podcast and your niche first? Like, a lot of people like to grow. They see that, people are doing these shorts of their podcasts and it's taking off. But you want to make sure that you're comfortable with whatever you're talking about first, especially if you have never been on camera before. Because imagine you're still figuring out what your podcast is. You're still, you're just talking and you haven't really figured out the storyline. Then you put a camera in your face for the first time. You're going to introduce a whole nother world of problems for yourself that you didn't even know were maybe there before. Now, if you're starting your first podcast with video, different, because you would have approached that issue first podcast. So make sure you have your podcast locked down and then jump into video. First is, again, iPhone. If you have an iPhone, they shoot incredible video. I have a camera at home that is $6,000 camera, $6,000 video camera. And I've tested that video camera up against my iPhone, and I've did A and B tests with people when I was in Dallas. I did it a couple of times every year. People weren't able to tell the difference if it was shot with an iPhone or that $6,000 camera. These phones are incredible. So don't think that you need, certain gear to get started with your podcast. You have all your audio here, you have all your video here, and all you have to do is get like some type of tripod like I have now, or, even something bigger, and just sit it on the stand wide, and there you go. Now you have your video camera for your podcast, especially if you have a good lighting. The only time these don't do well is when you don't have good lighting. And so if you're going to buy lighting, the first thing I recommend is, I'm sure you guys have seen them everywhere, a ring light. Just get a ring light. They do really, really well. And you can actually attach your phone in the middle of the ring light. You can get them on Amazon for like $49. You can get it at Walmart for like $30. If you're going to really jump up into your podcasting, like you can see this camera over here, and there's some cameras sitting around, like one over there. These are really good podcasting cameras, but again, they're not cheap. I think this whole setup right here is $1,500 for a podcasting camera. And typically you would want more than one, so you can get your guest, and you can get yourself, and you can get a wide if you want that. But this is called Blackmagic. Blackmagic 4K, 6K, whichever one you want. Last thing with video is, let's say you really want to upgrade and you want to get like the similar look of what I have on my podcast. I'll show you exactly what setup I use. So I use the Rodecaster Pro, and the reason why I love this board is because it's dummy proof. I feel like I can't really mess up. Whenever you plug a microphone into this board, it literally has presets for these microphones that I showed you here today. Actually, every single microphone that I have up here, from these wireless microphones, they can wirelessly connect to this board for this Shure SM7B. It connects to the board. The pod mic connects to the board. This through USB connects to the board. And they have profiles for each and every microphone. So that means that if you get really, really loud or you talk soft, this microphone is gonna program your audio to sound the best it possibly can without you knowing anything about audio. So that's why I bought this one. There are smaller versions. You can get one for $4.99, and then there's this one, which is $6.99, and it gives you up to 5 microphone inputs. So this is the one that I use for my podcast, and then I use all SM7Bs for 4 different microphones, and then I use this camera right here, the Blackmagic 6K. And last thing is light. So like I said, you can use a ring light, but you really want, let's say for instance, if you're like in the middle of this room, there's not a lot of light in the middle of the room. So I like to use these guys right here. They're called lanterns, and it will just blast a whole room with light and fill it up. So it'll make any camera look good, whether it's your iPhone or that. And you can get these for this entire lighting kit. Don't look at the brand. This is an expensive light. But you can get cheaper ones, standing all for maybe $200 total. So this is a really good investment. Like if I'm gonna start off today, I would start with my iPhone, and then after I do a couple of episodes, I would then buy these microphones, the wireless ones, and then I would buy a light like this. With those 3, you can get a really good-looking podcast for not a ton of money, considering that if you're gonna do it for a long time, then you receive your investment back. So I think that's pretty much all it is with gear. So now I'm gonna open up the floor for any questions that anyone may have, if you have any questions. Yes? So if you go to ChatGPT, I created an AI pod. It's called AI Podcaster. It's for free. You can use this for free. It's not paid. AI Pod Intro. If you search that, you can find it on there, and it'll do AI content, copy work for your podcast for you. And a lot of people, they like to manually write it. I get it, but I do so many stinking episodes, so many shorts. I just don't have time. And so I've trained this based off of exactly how I want the copy to come back from my podcast. If I get a new podcasting client, for instance, I'm doing a podcast now for the city of Fort Smith. I've created a new AI bot, and I've trained the AI bot on Fort Smith's website content. So now if someone is doing a podcast, or when we do a podcast and I pull that transcript, it will automatically pull relevant links from their website to put in the description. So let's say we say, hey, looking for an awesome day trip at the Devil's Den, Fort Smith is your hub for that. It'll go pull an article from their website to put right there to reference people for SEO purposes, because obviously businesses a lot of times are looking to direct the traffic somewhere else other than, the podcast. More questions? Fight over it.
I missed the very first part where you were talking about what you're using before you talked about the AI bot. I walked in right after that. Can you tell me what program that was?
Oh, maybe Riverside? Was it for recording podcast?
Before you talked about your chat GPT bot, when I walked in, maybe that's what we were talking about.
I was talking about the voice, just a voice application within your iPhone. Yeah, completely for free, and it does a lot of different stuff that you wanted / needed to. So.
Sorry, I also missed the beginning of your presentation. Sorry. What would be your perfect combo for the people who are tech is always having issues? What is your favorite die-hard this gives you no problems? Is awesome for if you don't want to mess it up too much.
Yes. So, what type of podcast do you have a podcast, or are you looking?
I'm the lazy one, so I have an Elgato webcam directly plugs into my computer. I have ATR 2100X plugs directly into my computer. That's how I roll. But let's say I want to upgrade, but I
So since you're with Elgato, they're really, really good. I like Rode, but Elgato is very, very user-friendly. So first, what I recommend for you specifically is the microphone that you're talking about, is it Elgato? No?
ATR 2100X.
Okay, so these, like, Elgato sells microphones just like these that literally plug directly into your computer with one cord, and they already have presets like this board has built into the microphone. So I've never had issues with this microphone when I'm using my computer for podcasting. And then Elgato also sells webcams. Um, and then this is an Elgato stand as well. So honestly, like between those two, if you're using Riverside, I rarely run into issues. And especially if you're going to like hire someone to help you out, or maybe you have like an intern or a friend or a kid who you just want to learn tech. With Riverside, like I have a lot of clients who use Riverside remotely, and I do their podcasts from all over. And I can log in and set up their podcasts for them in their guest and send their guest a link through Riverside. And when they're podcasting or right before, I can also check everything on their computer to make sure everything's correct through Riverside. And Riverside's like $15 a month, I believe. So it could be expensive for if you're only doing one podcast a month. But if you're doing more than one, maybe it's something to look into. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
What are your editing softwares for your audio and your video?
Yes. First podcast, are you starting a podcast?
First podcast, but I did audio video some work at university.
Okay.
Before I retired, but I'm just curious about what you use.
Okay, so what I use is video editing softwares to do my audio engineering. So I use DaVinci Resolve. It's a free program, completely free. You can download it and do everything you need to with audio. I also use, the reason why I was a little bit tempted to say what I use is because also I've bought like 2,000 plugins, $2,000 worth of plugins for audio just for DaVinci Resolve. So if you download DaVinci Resolve, you may have a little bit more issues trying to get exactly the same audio that I'm getting without those plugins. But if you're really trying to get really good audio, there is something called Adobe on a web browser. If you go to Adobe AI Podcast, I think it's called, you can throw audio into that web browser, and it will clean up the audio for you pretty good for someone who's a beginner. And so whenever my friend first started out, they just did that. It's completely free. You just throw it in there, it'll clean up all your audio, and it'll give it back to you. Just upload it to Spotify or YouTube.
Does that make a transcript at the same time?
I think it does now. I think it does. If you're really gonna be working with, like if you don't mind, if you're really gonna be working with audio, for instance, like I know I was talking to you someone earlier about like how they edit their podcasts, and they were like, it's really, really tedious. We're pulling sound bites and all those different things. Another program I like to use is called Descript. Descript will clean up your audio for you. They have audio stuff, but more importantly, what they will do is transcribe that audio for you and allow you to edit the audio like it's text. And you can also, this is creepy, I do it a lot, but you can clone your voice. So I've cloned my voice, and for all the other podcasts that I run, I've cloned their voice. They have to give it permission. So like if they say a word wrong, because again, these guys are like career professionals, so they want to look as nice and sound as nice as they can on camera and video. So if they said a word wrong, like if they said Fort Smith and they tried to say Fort Smith, I can replace that with the AI voice of theirs, and we don't have to obviously try to reshoot that. So that's super helpful. I think Descript is like $9 a month or maybe $10 a month, something like that. 12? Is it 12? Yes. I love Descript. Any other questions before Ty takes the microphone from me? Awesome. Well, I'll be around. Oh, were you about to say something? I'll be around, so feel free to ask any questions at all. Again, if you're looking for any of the podcasts that I've created or I currently create, mine that I do locally is called Arkansas Minds, which I'm on a break now. I started it 3 months ago, posted 36 episodes since then, and I'm taking a break now, and we'll move into season 2. Maybe in a different part of the state. Maybe I'll come up here and interview business owners. And then also the one that I was talking about that did really, really well in Texas is called the LOL Podcast, if you want to look that up. So thank you.